In the last class, we have already discussed about Uddiyana Bandha, especially verse number 76 and 77. So, after discussing this Uddiyana Bandha, next Bandha comes Jālandhara Bandha. Let us read. Badhnatihi siro jalam nadho yati na bhojalam tato Jālandharo Bandha kantha dukho ghanashanaha Jālandhare krute bandhe kantha sankocha lakshane na pīyūṣa patantyagño na vāyu prakošpyati. Sorry. Hope you have text so far, okay? So when you don't have text, please let me know so that we will provide you. So here he says, look, first is Uddiyana Bandha. So this through Uddiyana Bandha, when a person makes all these vāyu completely under control and making the prana vāyu to go up through Sushumna, that's why it is called Uddiyana. It is not mere physical, also there are a lot of other activities too. Now he says, look, next to this called Jālandhara Bandha. So Jālandhara Bandha is very interesting because we say that in space, especially above throat region, the amṛtam remains. That's why this yogic concept to be explained. This Rahu and Ketu, the planet, the head was chopped, you know how it happened. So this amṛtam was suspended. The story goes. So you can Google it. Just I am giving you the link. So how that each incident is connected to Yoga Shastra, that's all. And here he says what is to be done? That neck is the net of the body. That's why it is called Shirojalam. In fact, the neck is everything. That's why all the nadis, and if you want to say all your arteries, veins and everything becomes narrower in neck region. That's why the neck region becomes most important thing in life. In fact, when we were studying, they used to say, do you know, that passing high school is like neck. Because once you pass high school, you can pass anything and everything those days, okay? But nowadays, don't ask me. If you have passed high school, means you can pass anything, okay? That those days, it was that tough. However, here he says, look, this Sirojalam that happens to be in where Kanthadeshe. Now, one need to lock it. Badhnati. So how to, tie it down? How to create lock? And what will happen? He says, look, if you want to lock, of course the process is very clear. Bring down the chin physically to the chest, Hrudadesha. So Chibukam comes to Hrudadesha, bringing down. And as you bring it down physically, you make some type of lock on your throat. Automatically it happens. But still one can breathe. Not that one cannot breathe. But here the trick is you have to completely lock because no breathing there. Not allowing. So both physically and also internally you need to lock. Once this is done, what will happen? So physically locking, the vāyu flow will be restricted. Internally locking, also vāyu flow will be stopped. But also you need to understand that logic behind what we call as astrally understanding. Through that you can stop amṛtam to flow down. So there are three levels: physical, internal, or you can say external, internal instead of physical, external, internal, and astral with understanding. So when you don't allow the nabhojalam to fall down, and where is this nabhojalam is there? We called as, that is in the skull, kapalam, in the cavity of the skull, the brain, and which is nothing, again we say the amṛtam of Chandra, Chandramṛtam iti. Many places, many way has been discussed. In fact, when you start practicing Pranayama, you will start drinking nectar. In fact, your saliva becomes sweet. A lot of things happens. However, here it says, Tataha, thereafter, Jālandhara Bandha, this Jālandhara Bandha to be done what? He says, for what? Kantha dukhogha nasanaha. So that means, here, this Jālandhara Bandha destroys dukkham and also rogam. All sort of pain and diseases. And especially he uses this word, Jālandhare krute bandhe kantha sankocha lakshane. So in the form of bringing down or closing this kantha desam, this throat region, na pīyūṣa patanti agno. So definitely this is Chandramṛta, pīyūṣam, will not fall where? In Jatragni. And when it does not fall in Jatragni, there will be no leakage, there will be no damage at all. That's why na vāyu prakupyati also. And because of which now the pancha pranas will not get imbalanced. So there won't be any sort of jerk or any sort of difficulties with reference to this pancha prana. And of course, regarding this Jālandhara Bandha, different text talks differently. For example, Hatha Yoga Pradipika says, Kanthamakuchya Hudaye Stapayat Chibukam Drudham Bandho Jālandhara Ayam Jara Mrityu Vinasaka. Same concept, nothing much. So that bringing down the chin to the chest, Chibukam to Hrudam. And of course, Hrudaye, Dridham, you need to press it strongly. And when this is called as Jālandhara Bandha, what it does? Vinasaka, destroyer of both Jara. Jara means the geriatric problem, aging, old age, and Mrityu, the death. And of course, especially Yoga Tattva Upanishad also do talk very nicely. And different text talks elaborately, almost same way, little bit here and there differences. So somebody adds, for example, Hatha Yoga Pradipika says, Jara Mrityu Nivaraka. There it is being said, Mrityu Matanga Kesari. So some changes here and there, but the concept is one and same. So that means here it says, after Uddiyana Bandha, this Jālandhara Bandha also plays a major role. Then after Jālandhara Bandha, we have to talk about Mūla Bandha. Generally, people do talk or highlight Mūla Bandha, and which is popular all over. That is just physical aspect of Mūla Bandha. In fact, as I was looking at in different texts, especially if we look at that other texts, this is being called as also Yoni Bandha. Sometimes that Mūla Bandha also is called as Yoni Bandha too. And why? Let us look at these two aspects first. That why Mūla Bandha, that is popular nowadays, is just mere physical but not in real. And what is the reality? First of all, we say very common way that Mūla Bandha means that pulling your anus up. That is how everybody teaches. Still people will not able to understand. So that's why what we say, you practice Setu Bandhasana. So when you practice Setu Bandhasana, so in Setu Bandhasana, you will discover that automatically this Mūla Bandha has to happen. So there is a trick. So those who cannot or don't understand, they are so gross, we teach them Setu Bandhasana first. So being in Setu Bandhasana, then you can make out where and how to go about it. Number one. Now once the person knows that what happens, now starts doing physically. That is how everybody practices. But in reality, actually the Mūla Bandha becomes complete, or that is called real Mūla Bandha, when physically you especially bring your heel to the perineum, to the Yonisthanam, so that you push it, and of course physically you can pull off the anus, but most importantly that Apana vāyu is supposed to be pulled up to merge with prana. Then only Mūla Bandha is complete. Keeping this, let us read. Pashnibhagena sampidya yoni ma kunchayet gudam apana murdhamakrusya Mūla bandho vidhiyate apana pranayor raikyat kshayo mrityu purishayo yuva bhavati vruddhopi shatatam mūla bandhanat. He says, look, if the person keeps practicing Mūla Bandha regularly, continuously, Bruddhaha api yuva bhavati. Even the person is old, becomes young. Okay? So now the best tip, so that all of you can look young. If you do not look young, at least mentally you can be young at least, okay? So the best tip is what? Bruddhaha api, even though the person is a Bruddhaha, old person, becomes yuva, it becomes young. And not only that, he says beautifully that when a person does Mūla Bandha, both Mutra and Purishayoho Kshaya Bhavati. So Mutra means urine, Purisha means that the shit. That also gets reduced. So that's why if a person does Mūla Bandha regularly, will not eat unnecessarily. That's why one of the rule of yogi is not supposed to eat too much. That's why general rule of any yogi, they make it very clear. Only when pittam time is there, they only eat that time. That's why I have seen also few yogis, those who eat only once in a day. They don't eat more. One meal, that's all. And body adjusts. It is like you can see, I see for myself, I can openly say to you that in Indian context, I can say here, North Indian context, suppose you decide to have 2 chapati. Absolutely no problem. First day you may feel uncomfortable, 2 chapati is perfect. Suppose someday food is good, or you become sick or health is bad, so then you increase 1. If you start taking 3 chapati for 1 week, after that to come down to 2 takes time. So mentally you feel that it is not sufficient, but in reality it was sufficient. You understand what I am trying to say? 2 chapati is sufficient enough. But because you have been acquainted now for 3, even though few days back or 1 week back you used to have only 2, now from 3 to 2, you don't feel like coming back unless you see some bulging somewhere or something goes wrong. You understand? So how the mind works and the way we consume food, it is related to our psychological problem. I should not talk this language, but sometimes true. When I say psychological problem, as all of you know, those who had suffered in Second World War, or here in India, that time the famine happened, or any family, some type of, shortage of food was there some time or other. you will discover their gene, their generation, next generations, they will develop topei, they will develop the stomach. The fat will start increasing, whether you like it or not. Because the gene will start suggesting a food may not be there, eat. Why not eat more? You understand? And when genes start suggesting, and once that becomes a habit, it becomes very difficult to get out of that unless there is some strong decision enough. So how, this is actually a study, already they have confirmed this study, that's why I openly say this point. Same thing also, anytime the food that we consume little more than necessary, it is connected to either gene or our past experience. So in that we need to be very careful in this regard. And he says, look, when you start practicing Mūla Bandha, then definitely the food intake will come down. Whatever is required for body, you need to. Remember, if you are going for physical work, this and that, you need to eat, okay? So don't compromise, then you will be nowhere. So manage. That's why yogi means sitting one place, you can do it. Not, doing everything you don't want to. Then neither will be this side nor that side, okay? So these are the side effects. So I am putting disclaimer. However, here he says, look, what is to be done? He says, first, yonim akunchayet gudam sampidya prashni bhagena. So making the heel, bringing to the yonishtanam, press it, so that physically there is some type of pressure. That's why Siddhasana becomes very good. And once this is done, then you need to pull up the gudam. So pulling up gudam means pulling up the anus. There, while pulling up, akrusya urdham apanam urdham akusya iti. So you need to also pull up the apana vāyu. This is the trick. So once the apana vāyu is being pulled up, then that is called as Mūla Bandha. Mūla Bandha vidhiyate. So until I am able to pull up apana vāyu, that is not Mūla Bandha. This is the gross part. That is popular version of Mūla Bandha. The reality of Mūla Bandha is what? While doing external and internal, also I need to look at the astral part of it, the knowledge aspect of it. Only when these three come together, then only this will be called as Mūla Bandha. And he says, what happens there? Apana pranayoho aikya. So there, apana and prana becomes one. The oneness, the merging, agreeing each other, joining together, takes place between apana and pana. And because apana and pana, aikya bhavam happens, because of that, all the result comes. Until and unless that oneness takes place, then of course result won't come either. That's why this particular thing or this particular process have been discussed in different texts also. And do they talk differently? Like, for example, say, I would like to say, we have seen Shiva Samhita. How many of you remember Shiva Samhita? Any one of you, at least. Some trick, some technique, something. Shiva Samhita gone somewhere, okay? Swamiji, that those days you taught, we were enjoying, and especially pandemic time, if I am right, correct? So, we completely forgot, okay? No problem. So, there also, it has been discussed, Pada mulena sampidya, Guda margeshu yantritam, Balad apan akrishya, Kramat urdham sucharayet, Kalpitoyam Mūla bandha, Jara marananasana, Apana pranayoho aikyam, Prakarutyadhikat kalpitam, Bandhananena sutaram, Yoni mudram, Prasidhyati. Siddhayam Yoni mudraya, Kimna siddhyati bhutale, Bandhasyasya prasadena, Gagane Vijitanilaha. From Shiva Samhita. And of course, there are many different text talks. Same thing, little bit here and there, differences. So the point here is that, so first is pushing through the heel, the Yonisthanam, the Gudamargam. And then what happens? Now you need to pull it up. So there is some type of pressure you need to create, some type of effort you have to put. And once that is pulled, then internally and understanding way, you need to pull up your prana. That's why first thing is we try to understand that how this prana, apana, all these vāyus moves. I'll give you one small trick so that I'll stop with this. If you observe your body, generally I get it. Long before anything happens to me, like one day before at least, I'll have some type of symptoms in my fingers. Sometimes little finger, sometimes this finger, that one. For no reason there will be some pain. And each pain is related to some complication tomorrow. And generally, I get the pain one day before. For no reason. So that means the body gives the indication to understand. And I have noticed whenever there is pain in my fingers, differently, it has its own impact later on. And perfectly it goes well. So that means if this happens to me, each one of you must be getting some type of indication long before your body becomes or goes other way around. And here he says that when you have the understanding of this prana and apana, and along with other vāyus, then it becomes easier to play. With this also one more point I can say. Generally, it's a bad way they do it, but in India they do it. Suppose the person is doing, the hiccups comes. And while eating or whatever, keeps coming, hiccups. And you make the person to drink water, nothing, stops, it happens. Do you know what they do? They will hit. Very strong hit they give, and suddenly, without the knowledge of the person. Either, generally not in cheek, on the back or somewhere, thigh, somewhere. They will hit, or shoulder, real hit they give. And when they give the hit, the person will be shocked. Why I was being beaten up? And you will be shocked to know the moment the mind goes to the questioning why I was being beaten up. What is the reason? Why happened? What happened? Now the hiccups stops. So the prana, this is all about prana we have discussed in details earlier. Now when the mind is diverted to other things, now the prana somehow gets balanced. So whether it's right or wrong, don't ask me the question. This is the general process they do it. This is a common habit I have seen in many cases. Like that we do have. So that's why here if you have understanding of all the pranas, then it becomes much more easier and convenient. Then don't ask me, Swamiji, how to understand prana. Then I will say, look, try to understand my head, okay?